Now it's time to make this a game, a reflex game. The first step is to create a variable that keeps track of when a user is allowed to click their button. Let's call it legal click time. I'm going to give it the type unsigned long and then legal, the name of the variable, legal click time. This is when it's going to be the legal time at which a user can click the button. Now, the unsigned long part, that just means how big of a number can this variable store. A byte can only store a number that's between 0 and 256, which for all of these variables up here, that was big enough. But for the legal click time, we're going to be keeping track of how many milliseconds has passed since a given time in the past, and that number grows pretty quick. So we need something that can store much larger numbers. This one is a little bit overkill, but it's going to work with another function we're going to use here in just a little bit, which uses the same type. An unsigned long number can range in size anywhere from 0 to over 4 billion. Before we move on, we need to learn how a couple built-in functions work. The first is the millis function. The millis function keeps track of how many milliseconds have passed since the Arduino began running the current program. To see it in action, let's print it to our console. We can do that by typing, and I'm going to do this in my loop, serial.println, and then millis. And then because it's a function, I've got to have the parentheses for the millis, and then I need a closing parenthesis for this parenthesis right here, and then a semicolon. When you start the program, you should see, let's open up the serial monitor here. You should see numbers start showing up in the serial monitor that grow really quickly. If you're using an actual Arduino, you'll see this number grow much faster. It's going pretty slow right now because this emulator doesn't run at full speed. Next, you need to know how the random function works. It generates random numbers. Let's replace millis with random. And then I'm going to make it a random number somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000. 2,000 milliseconds and 3,000 milliseconds. That's what eventually we're going to use this for. But right now it's just a random number between 2,000 and 3,000. I'm going to clear my serial monitor, and then I'm going to start the simulation again, and you should see random numbers just popping up down here. There's no rhyme or reason to them. They're just random. I'm going to stop the simulation again. Now that we know how this random function works, and we're going to use these two functions to randomly turn on the green LED to indicate that it is okay or legal to click the buttons. At the bottom of our show score function, inside of it, so here's the beginning, here's the end, right before the end, after our for loop, I'm going to write digital right, and then green LED low. And then I'm going to put legal click time, and I'm going to set it equal to millis. How many milliseconds have passed since the Arduino started, plus a random number. A random number between, and for my purposes, for my program, I'm just going to use 2,000 to 3,000. You need a certain minimum value here. You don't want it to pop up instantly. I would say at least a second. But you can choose this number and you can choose this number. Pick different numbers, try them out, see what you like the best. I like these ones, but you can use different ones. Just make sure they're not too long. You don't want to wait around forever for that button to the LED to turn green. So this code will cause the green LED to be turned off right here. And then the legal click time, it's going to be increased by whatever the millis is plus this random number. Next, in our loop, we need to add, so I'm going to go to the top of my loop right up here, and I'm going to add if millis is greater than the legal click time. Now you got to remember, we set it equal to millis plus a random number, so millis should be less than legal click time the next time we go through the loop. But as time passes, millis is going to eventually catch up to legal click time. If it gets bigger than legal click time, then we want to do digital write green LED high, and that'll turn the LED on. That'll signal to the players that it's okay to click the button. Now, finally, we must check whether a player clicked their button before or after legal click time. So here, we always give the score to the left player if he clicks the button. But we need to check, was it a legal click? So inside this if statement, I'm going to add another if statement. If, and then I'm just going to say millis, again, if that's greater than legal click time. If it's greater than legal click time, then it was a legal click. And I'm going to get this to line up just right. And he should get the point. The score should move towards him. Now, players can't score points until the green LED comes on. But a player could just click his or her button as fast as possible. They could just be pushing it as fast as they could. And that wouldn't really be a game that tests a person's reflexes. To prevent that kind of strategy, we need to penalize players who click the button before the light turns green. To do so, let's add an else statement right here as a second condition of this if statement. And if they click, if it was an illegal click, we want to do the opposite. We want to take a point away from them. We want the score to move away from them. So I'm going to put score plus plus. Once you've made these changes, go ahead and test it and see if it works. So I'm going to click the button now, and the score moved away from me because the LED had not turned green yet. I'm going to wait now until the LED turns green, and then I will click the button and see if the score moves towards me. Oh, it's green now. That's a legal click. I push it and the score moves towards me. Because I've tested my code, it looks like it's working. It's time for another commit. Go ahead and make a commit before you make any more changes. Make sure your commit message is reflective of what we have just done. Once you've made that commit, it's time to add the same kind of code, similar code, for the right player. Again, test it, and once you've tested it and made sure it's working, add another commit.